This lecture is on The Challenge of Cultural Relativism by James Rachels. Recall that one of the arguments for divine command theory was that it provides the only plausible basis for a single, correct, true morality, or moral objectivity. The idea of moral objectivity is popular, but not universally shared. Some moral philosophers think that morality is relative to something, such as time, place, person, or culture. That is, on moral relativism, what actions are right or wrong depend on who a person is and/or where a person is and/or the time period in which she lives and/or the culture to which she belongs. On these views, there isn't any single correct and true moral system. Cultural relativism, CR, is the moral theory stating that actions are right or wrong if and only if they are believed to be right or wrong, respectively, within a person's culture. On CR, what literally makes an action right or wrong is facts about one's culture. This is instead of, for instance, facts about what God commands. So, why believe in cultural relativism? Often, its proponents give the cultural differences argument. The first premise is that different cultures have different moral codes. It draws the conclusion that, therefore, there is no objective truth in morality. Right and wrong are only matters of opinion, and opinions vary from culture to culture. You can fill in the argument with any questionable act, such as disposal of the dead or infanticide, which are discussed in the reading in your book. However, I agree with Rachels that this is a very bad argument. It's missing an important premise. To make the argument work, you have to add this premise in bold. The fact that people have differing beliefs is evidence that there is no truth about the matter at hand. So you need that new premise to connect the first premise to the conclusion, logically speaking. Unfortunately, the new premise is false. Differing beliefs are not evidence that there is no truth about something. For instance, some people still believe the Earth is flat. That doesn't mean that there is no truth about the shape of the Earth. People also have differing beliefs about the answers to some difficult math problems, but that doesn't mean there aren't any mathematical truths. So it seems that the argument for cultural relativism is not a good one. But a lot of people, such as some anthropologists, continue to believe in cultural relativism anyway. Let's pretend for the moment that cultural relativism is correct after all. What are some consequences of taking cultural relativism seriously? First, we could no longer say that the customs of other societies are morally inferior to our own. That's because there is no objective standard by which to compare one culture's moral code against another's. On cultural relativism, all cultures are equally right. Some cultures do things like perform unsafe and painful female circumcisions. This practice is not morally criticizable on cultural relativism. In fact, the practice is morally obligatory for a woman who lives in such a culture. Does that seem right to you? Second, we could decide whether actions are right or wrong just by consulting the standards of our society. This is because the standards of society provide guidelines for moral action by definition on CR. So when slavery was well accepted in the US, it was morally permissible. Then, when the tides of public sentiment turned, it became morally impermissible. We can know this just by polling people, and moreover, the results of the poll are what make the action right or wrong. Does this seem right to you? Or are polls useful because they indicate those actions that were already and independently morally permissible? Finally, on cultural relativism, the idea of moral progress is called into doubt. Think about the civil rights movement and other nonviolent protests, such as sit-ins at segregated restaurants. Typically, we think of the movement as having achieved moral progress from a morally worse state of racial affairs to a better one. But on cultural relativism, nonviolent protesters were acting wrongly by disobeying the racist standards of society. Furthermore, there is no meaningful sense in which the moral state of affairs improved. Does this seem right to you? Cultural relativism may be attractive at first and seem like it explains the data about cross-cultural moral differences. However, the argument from cultural differences is very weak. Furthermore, the consequences of taking cultural relativism seriously are quite bad. As a result, cultural relativism should probably be rejected.